Hi there, YouTubers and weavers. Although you're going to think this sounds crazy when I say weavers, because we're going to build a log cabin. So let's get started. Okay, for the log cabin, what we need is two colors of thread in both the warp and the weft, and they're going to be the same colors in both warp and weft. And the weave structure will basically be plain weave or tabby or whatever you want to call that. And the two colors I'm choosing are very similar, but there's just enough difference that I think you'll be able to see the log cabin when I get done with this. That's my hope, at least. So here's color number one. The name on it is Red Purple. Red Purple, color number one. Set that on top of the loom. Color number two, I think of it as a dark purple, but officially it's called eggplant. Or for those of you in Great Britain, aubergine, but it says eggplant on the label. So both of these are Rayon Chenille, and that's what we're going to use to work with, and our set will be 12 ends per inch. Okay, so let's start by putting on and measuring out some warp, and the goal here is to make a scarf that will be around 7 feet long by about 8.5 to 9 inches wide. I'm going to go for 9 inches wide in the reed, and there'll always be a little bit of draw in. So we're going to measure out 3 yards of these two threads. Kind of hard to stand in the right position, so I feel comfortable winding the warp on, and you can still see what I'm doing on the warping board. So I think I've mentioned this before, but my warping board, because it's a homemade one, I could set it up the way I wanted. The length between each of the pegs is 1 yard. So I know that, and I've got some orange thread on here just to give me a path to follow. I'm going to follow the path over to there, back to there, and up to here to make the cross, and then go back again. And hopefully you can see this. I've got 2 threads, one from each of my 2 colors. And I'm going to be warping 2 threads at a time, or measuring 2 threads at a time. So we'll tie a little slip knot in the end of that, put it over the peg that's at one end of our measurements, come up to here, over to here, up, down, make our cross, and go back around. There's 3 yards one way and 3 yards back for 2 threads. So we'll do this again. Two. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 end pieces there, which means that I've got 12 pieces of thread going this way, which means I've got 1 inch of warp for in the reed. And I'm just going to continue doing this. There's no point in you watching me go back and forth like this for forever, because it's going to be the same thing you just saw. So that's how I'm measuring out my warp for this project of log cabin. Let's take a look at log cabin weaving by starting a new drawdown in my PCW Silver program. And first, let's increase the size of this to make it easier to see. And yes, this is set up for a 12 shaft weave because I have a 12 shaft loom, but we're only going to use 2 shafts to do log cabin. So we'll go across here for a ways. That's wide enough. Let's do the same thing going down. And then you can see that the default color of warp thread is white. The default color of weft thread is blue. But because we are doing log cabin, I'm going to do some changes to that. So I'm going to set my default color of warp to be alternating blue and white, like this. And I'm doing that for the first 20 threads from here through here. I'm going to change the sequence. Instead of odd being blue and even being white, beginning with thread 21, I'm going to let odd be white and blue be even. All right. Then we need to do the same thing, alternating colors in the weft as in the warp. So let's start out. We need to change it from blue to white, so we'll do this. 1, 2. And now I'm going to leave 2 blue ones. So numbers 1 through 10 are white, blue, or odd being white and even being blue. Now, starting with number 11, I'm going to have blue be the odd and even be the white. And we'll change that again going down here. All right, still doesn't look like a log cabin much, but if we put a tie up into this, like this, you can see that we have the log cabin effect in our threads. Maybe that'll be a little bit more visible if I back it off. So there you go. That is the basic pattern for setting up a loom to weave log cabin. And the only difference between this and what I am doing on my loom is I have chosen different colors. Okay, we're back. It's been about 2 days since I showed you the warping of measuring the warp for this scarf project. I thought I'd show you another scarf. This one I did about 4 or 5 days ago on my Louette loom. And I found I had a problem with it because the beater bar on there, while I complain about how light it is when I'm doing something like that warp rep rug that I did a couple of years ago, for something as thin as this and with as lightweight of thread as this Rayon Chenille, that beater bar is too heavy. And I had a hard time having a light enough beat to not really pack the weft threads in. And so this scarf, and it's fairly long, about 6 or 7 feet, and I'm going to come in closer so you can get a better look at it. And I've put twisted fringes on the end. Anyways, this one I had a hard time not overbeating it. So this time for this newer project that I'm working on, I'm going to use the Ashford table loom because the beater bar is not as heavy. And I'm hoping I can get a more even and consistent relatively light beat when I'm putting the weft in. So let's take a look at this. At this point I have not put any weft onto it. I've simply got the warp threads all tied up, and I'm going to leave enough warp threads at the beginning so I can put a twisted fringe on this one too. Okay, so here we are. Before I start weaving, when you look at it like this, when there's no open shed, it looks like a fairly uniform color, even though it is in fact the two colors. And I admit, they're very similar in nature. But when I lift up one of the shafts, you can probably see that I've got the lighter color here, and then the slightly darker eggplant color here, then the lighter color again, then the darker, finally the lighter. Now that's with shaft 1 raised up. With shaft 2 you can see that it's reversed. So here's the dark, light, dark, light, dark, or red, purple, eggplant. So what I'm going to do is take my first throw across, very first one for this, with the darker thread. Now there's no point in beating because it's just not going to go anywhere. So we'll go down, and now we're going to go across with the lighter color. This time I will beat just a little bit. Now it needs to be tightened up just a little at the edge. So now we're going to go for the darker color, and I'm just going to take this beginning end here and shove it into the next open spot, just so I have a place to put it. Okay, there's no other reason for that. And that's there. Now we'll go across with the darker from this side. And beat lightly. Then we'll do the light color. And again, I'm going to just tie the end in. There's the light. Now we'll go dark again. Okay, YouTubers. I've woven, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet into this project, maybe not quite that long. Anyways, the log cabin effect is visible, but it is very subtle. And I'm going to try and point it out to you, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. So this section right here on the edge, from my finger going this way, you might be able to see that there are light and dark stripes going the length of the warp. And not up here. Up here I've changed the direction, and now I've got, again on this side, the light and dark stripes going the direction of the weft. Now in this section I've got light and dark stripes going the direction of the weft, and up here the direction of the warp. So I've got really 5 warp sections. Here, here, a thinner one in the middle here, here, and here. So warp direction, weft direction, warp direction, weft direction, warp direction, from here to here. And then now it's weft, warp, weft, warp, weft. So you can change that by the direction, by the sequence of the alternating colors of weft and warp. And I'm fully aware that this is difficult to see because I wanted it here, but I also wanted it to be subtle. So I'm hoping that the camera picks up on it enough. The other thing that makes it subtle is simply the fact that I'm using Rayon Chenille, which has a lovely feel to it, has a lovely drape when it's used, but it's a bit, the fuzziness that it has to it makes it a little bit harder to see the log cabin pattern. So that's a little bit about it. Let's zoom the camera out just a little bit and weave for a few throws across the weft. Right now we're for this particular material, I'm closing the shed when I beat because I find otherwise I tend to beat too hard. And then that just really packs it in and I don't want that. So there's a light color. There's a dark color. And a light color. And a dark color. And a light color again. As you can see, I'm alternating. The other thing that you have to do with this, because you're alternating your wefts, you have to be very careful on the edge to always catch the previous weft when you're going back across. Otherwise, I had that problem when I very first started. I ended up leaving the single farthest over to the side weft or warp thread not getting woven. So when I'm coming across, I'm going to go up here, set that down, and that thread was wrapped around underneath here, or over I guess. So we're going to close this, come in here, and when I pull this through, you're going to see that this most recent weft thread is laying over the top of the lighter color one. Now I'm going to open up for the lighter color one and put it through, and that thread, how do I get my hand under here? You can hopefully see that the previous warp comes out over the top of the edge weft thread, then it goes under this one, and then it comes back in over the next one. So in effect, I'm weaving in one extra thread based on the weft at the selvage. So that is something you have to consider when you're doing a plain weave like this with two colors, with two different weft bobbins. That's probably not real understandable, and I understand that it might be difficult to follow when you're not seeing it yourself, but it is something that one does have to be aware of when working on a pattern like this. So there's just a little bit of weaving. Oh, what's this thing here? It's a piece of 6-inch long grosgrain safety pinned on to the cloth. I put it on when I change the sequence of my warp and weft to reverse the directions here. So to go from the warp direction here to the warp direction here, I did that by doing 2 wefts in a row of the same color. That in effect changes which direction you're going to go. And then I'm going to do this, I'm going to do in this sequence light, dark, light, dark, light, dark wefts until I get to here. And then I will do probably 2 dark threads together and then start going dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. And I'll do and I'll move the safety pin and slide up and measure the next 6 inches. That way I know I'm getting them all about the same. That's a lot easier than trying to count threads. So that's it for now. We'll get back to more of this in a little bit. Well, YouTubers, the scarf is obviously off the loom. I'm doing some twisted fringes for the end. You can kind of see that I need something to hold it in place while I work on it. So an old dictionary is perfect for providing the weight to hold it in place. What I'm doing now is just using this slaying hook to separate out the end threads so that I can grab them with the fringe twister. So let's, and there, I screwed that up, didn't I, already? That goes there. So this first 3, or first 2, now the second 2, finally the third set of 2. This Rayon Chenille is thick one way, but it's really thin the other. It's a very flat yarn, so it's hard to get a decent grip on it sometimes. So I need 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. 50 twists. And then we'll just take and put a little knot in the end of it so that it doesn't untwist. Slide it out. You can see it's still 3 separate twists. Let go. Now it's 1 twist. And got a few twists done on each end. I like to work from the outside in when I'm twisting fringes because that kind of, to me, that helps to not have things unravel a little bit at each end. So there we go. I've got a little ways to go, but this log cabin scarf project is almost finished. Okay, YouTubers, the log cabin scarf is finished. As you can see, my girlfriend here is wearing the blue scarf that I made without showing you the details while I was making it. So let's take that off of her, lay it over the top of the loom, and get out the log cabin scarf. First, let's bring it up close. And again, it's subtle, but it's there. And we'll show it to you. Of course, she's wearing the same thing without her clothes on as color-wise as with, but there she is wearing it. I think it's a pretty neat looking scarf. So anyways, if this was a short project and if you liked it, I'd appreciate you subscribing to my channel, and if you're already a subscriber, thanks a million. Bye-bye.